Oh. Well, good evening, everyone. And I am Dr. Felicia Durden. It's so awesome to have you all here tonight as we do our discussion on Will Smith's book titled Will. Let me get my screen to share again. I seem to, of course, start having technical difficulties just as we start recording. Here we go. All right, so welcome. Again, I'm Dr. Felicia Durden, and it is my pleasure to be with you all this evening as we do our study of Will by Will Smith. First, a little background on Will Smith. Will Smith is also known as a Fresh Prince. That is his name that he is his stage name, but he was born Willard Carroll Smith II. And he's from West Philadelphia. If you're at all familiar with his show, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, he sang about that in the lyrics of the show. So he is Willard Carroll Smith II, otherwise known as the Fresh Prince. And he was born on September the 25th, 1968 in West Philadelphia, born and raised. He had a first wife named Cherie, and they had a son, Willard Carroll, or the third, also known, he calls him Trey. And his current wife is Jada Pinkett Smith. And with Jada, he has two children, a son and a daughter, Jaden and Willow, which I like her name because it's a combination of his Willard and Willow. And I didn't know that until I read this book, actually. Smith is an actor, a rapper, and a producer. And he just won an Academy Award this year for his portrayal of Venus and Serena's father in the movie King Richard, which we will talk about, caused a little bit of controversy at the ceremony. All right, so we will move on. Let's talk a little bit about his early life. So Smith's early life was that he grew up in a neighborhood called Winfield in Philadelphia. And he actually attended parochial school when growing up. So his family, his father was from the military and his mom served on the education board. So his parents wanted a lot for him and they wanted their kids to do well. He had an older sister named Pamela and two younger siblings, which were twins, Harry and Ellen. His parents, as we read in the book, they had a volatile relationship and they separated when Will was 13 years old. And he began his rapping career at the age of 12 when his grandma had found his lyrics. She had made some comments to him, but he continued on with that. And we're glad he did because he got a lot of notoriety as a rapper. Now, he had some pivotal acting roles, and the one he's most famous for is portraying himself as Will. It was based off of his life in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And then he was also in a movie called The Men in Black, one of my favorites. That also got him some notoriety. After those movies, he was in Bad Boys and several others. He became known as an actor, and not just a comedic actor, which is what he did on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. He was hilarious on there, but he started to do these sci-fi action movies, and he did great in them. He was in many, many movies. Some were Bad Boys, Men in Black, Independence Day. He did a fine job in Ali, portraying Muhammad Ali. Another movie that got him a lot of attention was The Pursuit of Happiness, which he got he was nominated for Best Actor for that one. And then, of course, the King Richard, where he recently won his Oscar. So some of the things that Will talked about in the book was that sometimes he was not seen as being Black enough, that he didn't feel that he was Black enough. So he was taunted for this, like even in his rapping in the beginning, he was, it was said that his raps were not hard enough, they were too soft. I remember he was called a bubblegum rapper because people just didn't feel that he was quote unquote Black enough, which we're going to talk about that later too. So let's hear his own words about the racial dynamic. And we're going to look at something he did in an interview with Oprah, where he talked about this notion that he's not Black enough. So let's get that to share. So we're going to listen to Will now.
early on in your rap career, you write about facing constant criticism. And I love this quote. You say, at Catholic school, no matter how well-spoken or intelligent I was still the Black kid in Winfield. No matter how up I was on the latest music or fashion, I was never quite black enough. I became one of the first hip hop artists who was considered safe enough for white audiences, but with Black audiences, I was labeled soft because I wasn't rapping about hardcore gangster stuff. This racial dynamic is something that has plagued me in various forms throughout my entire life. And I wanted to ask you, how have you navigated what you call this racial dynamic?
So the elixir for me has been comedy. Comedy crosses all divides. If you learn how to make people laugh, it's like, it's the sugar for anything else that you want to bring to that person. People are wide open when they're laughing, right? So for me, throughout my career, the bigger the laugh, I realized the less I was the Black dude. Right? The bigger the laugh, the less I was the soft dude, right? Laughter trumps everything. Right? And it's a magical energy that connects people, and that it, for a brief moment at least, purifies the poisons.
Yes. And you're not in any way marginalizing or minimizing overt racism, because you say every encounter I ever had with overt racism were with people I estimated to be weak enemies at best. So overt racism, although dangerous and ever present, never made me feel inferior. I thought that was so interesting. I felt the same way. So I was raised to believe that you can encounter any situation, racist or otherwise. Hard work, education, and God will topple any and all obstacles and enemies. And I wonder, how did that affect you moving through the world of power as a Black man?
So it's funny, Tyrese called me one time. He was going through something, and he was mad. He had just left a meeting or something like that. And he's like, man, what I gotta do to walk into these meetings and have them not look at me as just a walking in the office? And I said, well, you gotta stop thinking of yourself as walking in the office, right? So I don't think of myself like that, right? So because I don't think of myself like that, I'm not feeding that in the person that I encounter, right? But I think it's really important. And I was blessed, as I talk about in the book, my encounters with overt racism were never with people I thought were smart or strong.
Had any power.
They didn't have any power. You're like, even there were some, like, with police interactions. One of the times I got caught was from a cop, right? But JL, beside me, was my manager, had a law degree. So he said, thank you for that. We're gonna head right to internal affairs, right? So it's like the concept of intelligence, hard work, and God is what I was raised with as above all things.
And that you can fix it with that.
And you can fix it with that.
Okay. So we're gonna stop sharing that, and we're gonna turn that one off. 1 second. Tara, thanks for joining us. 1 second, you guys. And for some reason, I'm not able to see you all as I usually do.
Will Smith isn't shying away from
just
addressing his marriage to Jada Pinkett Smith. In a new interview with Oprah Winfrey, the 53-year-old actor spoke about his marriage after the host touched on the couple's revelation that they had spent a period of time separated. In a 2020
No, I don't
episode
even
of
see
Red
where this
Table
is coming
Talk,
from.
Pinkett
One
Smith
moment.
revealed she'd had a
All right, I'm able to fix it. Thank you. I am having a little technical difficulty this evening, not sure why. Please forgive me. But while I'm trying to figure that out, what did you guys think of what he said about his racial dynamics and how he never felt intimidated by overt racism, that it didn't bother him because he didn't feel these people had any power over him? Anyone, please tell me what your thought is on that.
I was confused because Latinos like us, like me, we encounter racism also, perhaps in different ways. But at a Catholic school, where you're surrounded by the power brokers who are the nuns or the priests and the church, you don't see the racism from them so much overtly, although you may be with friends who say things that might be considered racial or anti-Mexican or Latino, you just shrug it off. But at the same time, I don't think I understood what he meant when he said that, because he was at a safe place, the Catholic school. When he was away from the Catholic school, he was bullied, and kids probably bullied him and beat him up for various reasons that may not have had to do with race. He doesn't make it clear who were the bullies. If they were in his neighborhood, then I assume they were other Black boys like him or older boys like him, older than him. So I didn't understand what he meant when he said that.
Okay.
Although I do understand what he meant, and we'll talk about it later, comedy, I did get that point, yes.
Yeah, yes. I'm going to ask Tara, because I know that she's one of the reasons I picked the book too, because I know she had read it before. Tara, do you want to share what you felt he meant by that?
Sure. So I think, and I identify with what he's trying to say. What he's trying to say, he's giving the impression, because he's into self-awareness, self-help, personal development, that he doesn't want to assume the role of a victim. So in some way, I think what he's trying to say is that I'm not going to give racism power over me. But what he fails to deliver is that you can be unintimidated by a person who's oppressive, by a system that's oppressive, but still be impacted by it. I got a graduate degree, but I'm sure when I'm in corporate America, that my resume didn't resonate as high as other people who maybe were less educated than I did, but they were not Black and they probably had made more money. And I have no idea of everything that could have been happening behind the scenes. And my acknowledging that doesn't mean I'm intimidated by it. It's a reality in the United States and the world for people of color. But for him to make it, he's almost making it seem like he's powered through. And that's a privilege that he can say he's had. He's powered through racism. He's not impacted by racism. I don't think that they're not better than me. No, we don't. I mean, a lot of people can say the same thing. The racist is not better, but they still have an impact on systemic racism in our country, with judges and law enforcement and hospitals and schools and taxes. So I think he's speaking from a position of privilege, and it's kind of, so it could be insulting to someone who's like, right, we're not intimidated either. It doesn't make us weak to acknowledge we have racism in this country. So I get what he's saying, but I don't agree with the approach that he takes on that.
Thank you, Tara. I appreciate that. And thank you, Chris, too. Miss.
Excuse me, I wondered why he didn't talk more about the teachers in the school, or the nuns, if they were the nuns, or the priests, because they have a very strong presence in a Catholic school.
He didn't tell us exactly that.
Yeah. So I'm just curious about why he didn't talk about them as much as he talked about his fellow students. Probably because they were the ones who
said things
to him. Yeah. Yeah.
Miss Ruth, what do you think?
Yes, I've I've just had during my lifetime, even though I've done segregation schools, I've done segregation living, and I just don't sense that racial tension when I'm in groups. I feel like I'm just like they are. I'm human. And I don't sense I don't sense that I need to feel bad about being the color I am.
Good. I get that. It's just so individualized. So I can see both sides of it. I think when I was younger, my parents they told me exactly what Oprah was saying, and Oprah's from Mississippi, and my family's from Mississippi. My mom told me when I went to school, you're going to have to work harder, and they may act like that you need to do more, but that's because you're smarter. Black people are smarter. So she just set me up to expect to be pushed. She just made me think of it in that way. And so I just always thought, oh, it's because I'm smarter if they say something to me. But I didn't get it a lot because I was a baby of the family. So everybody all pumped me up. So I just thought I was just great. They were probably being mean, but I didn't care because that was me. It's like, I'm Felicia and this is my world. So I didn't really let it bother me. And then Tara and I actually went to school together. We went to schools where we were like the only 2 or 3 Black students there. I began to realize it a little bit more from my peers, not from my teachers. But I would just tell them, why are you saying things like that? Why are you being racist? I would actually try to call them out on it. And then of course it was like, no, we didn't mean it like that. Well, it sounded like that. And so I think I just always kind of fought back at it. It wasn't even when it was about me, because usually they didn't bother me, but it might be they said something about another Black person in the room and that person didn't have the strength to stand up. Then I would go get in their face. Hey, why did you just say that about him? I remember being that way, like I needed to protect others. So it's interesting. That's really been my experience, just sitting here thinking about it. I was visiting Boston pre-pandemic for sure. And someone was crossing the street and someone did a racial slur about a person. I think they were from the Middle East. And it enraged me. And I'm in this strange city and I just started yelling at that person. You can't talk to them like that. How dare you say things and say those words? And there were people around me. I'm like, aren't you guys going to say something? That's not okay. And of course, the people with me were like, shut up. What is with you? But it's just in me that I got to stand up and talk for them because they don't know that that's not okay. Maybe they don't understand it. So I get what he's saying. I don't know that he stands up for others, but he probably experienced it, but was privileged, as Tara put it. But it can be insulting for those who have not. But that's just my take. That's just my take on it. But it's individualized for sure. Definitely. All right, we'll move on. This is a good book. See, it's going to be good. We're not even going to talk about Chris Rock and him slapping him. That's not even the role of this book, because that wasn't in the book. So his themes in the book were coming of age, I think, and relationships. He talked a lot about relationships. And as Sarah was saying, he is about knowing himself. And I think this book was his way of really coming to terms with himself and his life and where he is. So you guys ready to get into our discussion? All right,
Sure.
All right. So what core message or messages do you think he was trying to convey in the book? What do you think it was his main core message? What is he trying to tell us in this book? This big, big book that he wrote, Will. What is the core message you think that he's trying to convey?
Well, I'll start off by him bungee jumping over the Grand Canyon when he reached the age of 50. was a message to his children that I thought his children didn't understand why he was doing this, but he was trying to convey to them to be strong, to follow through on what is important to one's life or one's person. He was using himself as their example of courage and strength, but at the same time, whether he was going to live or die, he was ready, but he was more ready to live than to die, where others were thinking he was just crazy. Here he was, an adult male, rich, famous, worldwide, makes all these movies, has all of these things going for him. Why do you want to bungee jump over the Grand Canyon?
It's something so crazy.
Why? Yeah, why are you doing that? What that's crazy. Why are you doing this?
Right.
Even he had trouble. But at the same time, I did read that he was just trying to show his children or others that he could do whatever he wanted. Nobody was gonna stop him. He just did it. He was gonna bear the consequences, but he had trust and faith in the people around him to make sure that he was gonna live. So it was a matter of him following through with himself doing this, but yet trusting others. And I think sometimes some like me, for example, just as an example, I might not want to trust others with my life.
Right.
You know how we're children and we do that little game of falling backwards and you hope your friends
you hope they're going to catch you.
catch you. And you go with that little exercise when you're little and they do. And maybe you learn something that they're your friends, but here you have this 50-year-old man assuming that his friends are going to save him, and they do. And he's probably satisfied at the very end. His family is happy that he's living. His children are still thinking he's crazy. And he's just laughing about the whole thing. So
that's good. That's a very good story. You're right. And it did show he wants us to know the courage. Thank you. I
don't know if that made any sense, but
it did. It's a core message that he's trying to convey, and he did that in other stories. Thank you.
But the Grand Canyon,
I know, why the Grand Canyon?
That was my second thought. You know, he could have jumped off the Eiffel Tower or something, but the Grand
why you got to go to the Grand Canyon? One of the wonders of the world. Okay. Tara, what did you think was one of his key messages, core messages? What's he trying to convey?
Another thing could be, I think he decided it's time to remove a facade that I've built around who I am. Perfect Will Smith, Golden Child, crossed over, because he reveals some very personal and somewhat shocking stories about his parents and the way his dad was, the violence behind his parents' relationship, his need to control in his relationships, his domineering, and in some of the misogyny and the way he treated the women in his relationships, and even the tensions with his current wife.
Yeah.
And admitting to his mistakes and also talking about his successes. I think he's very truthful in a way I wouldn't have expected in this book. I feel like he laid it all out, but maybe even not enough, because he still had this stuff inside him that caused him to do this most recent thing this year with the violence. But yeah, I think that it's about removing facades, removing a veil of who I am, just putting it out there that I'm going to come true. I'm going to be truthful about who I am and how I got here, and how I'm just like you, trying to be a better person after every mistake.
Yeah.
Learn victories and mistakes. So I appreciate that about the book, because some of the things I'm like, oh man.
Would I tell all that?
Yeah, but you're right, exactly.
He was really raw. Good. I agree. Miss Ruth, I don't know. You didn't really quite get to the books, unless you have something to say. I would say on page 23, in the third paragraph, he says, I was always a bit of an oddball. Things that felt normal to me could seem strange to others, and things that other people celebrated sometimes didn't inspire me in the least. I think that summed up what he's trying to convey is that we all are who we are and that it's okay to be your unique and authentic self. I think he's trying to convey authenticity, but I don't know from his recent attitudes is, are you really being who you say? You know, are you still the actor? Am I really seeing you? So I think he's trying to be authentic, but does he know how or can he be? But I think he wants to tell it. I think we're gonna see some changes in him in the next few years that we might see some more of what he truly is about. I think all the things with his wife, that must hurt him. I don't know. He seems to want to be still the golden, perfect boy. And everything's okay. There's no racism. It's okay if my wife does this. It's okay. I don't know. That's my thought on it. What do you guys think?
I think there is racism,
Mhm.
but do I have to get involved in it?
Mhm.
I suppose during my time of life, I've been protected of not really getting involved with what racism is.
You really are protected. Mhm. Mhm.
I don't have to listen to slurs.
Mhm. Mhm.
And when I was much younger and walking past the little boy that spit at me, I ignored him and kept walking. I didn't try to defend him or myself.
Mm. See,
You
Miss
know,
Ruth, you're sweet. I would have wanted to fight him.
Me too.
well, that's a generation.
Mhm.
And over the generation time, I have learned that I can really take people at face value
Mm.
until that time shows up.
Yeah.
And during my life, I've had very few of those times facing up to me
You're
as
blessed.
being that I wasn't being liked or I wasn't being a part of the group
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
because of who I was.
Yes. Yes. That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
You know, Miss Ruth, you mentioned the word generation,
Yes.
and I want to just bring this to our discussion. Reading about the rap generation and reading about the rappers
Mhm.
and reading about that whole genre that was just coming of age, not coming of age, but just entering our
Mhm.
lives with these young singers, young rappers, young musicians, young Black producers who knew what would happen in a new rap industry.
Mhm.
They may not have understood what was going to happen the way that Will Smith understood was going to happen. I think he had a different kind of a genius
Mm.
about rap, the music, the lyrics, himself, his movements, the words, the attention, the audience, the money. I think he had a feeling for all of that earlier, even before 12.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think he was surrounded 24 hours a day, like he said. He wrote lyrics, he heard the music, he made the music, he hung around with the boys that he knew who could be better rappers, but he was the best of all of them.
Hmm.
I think he introduced me to something I never understood and still don't understand, was rap. I mean, I knew Queen Latifah. I knew about her. I liked her.
I like her too.
I think what I liked were the women more than I liked the men.
Mhm. Mhm.
I liked Beyonce before she became famous.
Uh-huh.
So I always liked the women who had something more to say and different to say, but they did say it within that guise of rap
Yeah.
and talking and singing. I mean, I'm from the Motown generation, so I didn't understand rap.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that he explained it and expressed it and his role and what he did and how much money he made and he continued, I think he gave me a pretty good little lesson of why I never really liked rap to begin with.
Convinced you. Oh boy.
I yes, exactly.
That's
right.
hilarious, Trent. Oh my goodness. I love that.
Well, I'm still trying to understand it.
I like
you
some
know.
of it, but not a lot. But
Yeah.
not the current stuff I can't get into at all.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But his
I don't want to,
yeah.
I don't really
Yeah.
want to understand it
Oh, I know.
because it's very annoying to me at my age because it goes in one ear and come out the other. And I don't know what it's
What
being
was that all
said.
about? Right.
So I would rather not
Not even
listen.
deal with, not even, I know, I hear
And
you.
then when you add some of the wording that you put in there, especially, I guess he was trying to say he wasn't that kind of rapper.
No, his stuff wasn't. It was very light, but it was cute. It was cute music. He reminds me of Kid and Play. They're like, teen pop rap, I guess. All right, let's
Bubblegum rap.
bubblegum rap. There you go. He doesn't want to be called that though. Don't say that.
Yeah, right.
Mm.
I like I understand. I'm sorry. He did explain he was surrounded by his generation of friends.
Yeah.
Right.
And they all grew up together, but it was a different style, different generation altogether that nobody really understood his generation. That song, Kids Who Can Understand Anything They Say, why can't they be perfect just like we were? In that musical that was so popular.
Who can understand anything they say?
That's right, kids, right. I kept hearing that song in my mind, trying to understand Will Smith's generation of rappers.
I love that song.
Yeah, so I thought that was good. But at the same time, I didn't grow up with that music. I didn't grow up with his generation, obviously. I tried. My friends tried to teach me, but I just didn't get it.
That's Tara and I's generation, so I kind of get it, but I didn't like it that much.
I had an experience going to Latin, the graduation the other night, and that was done for this generation that's coming up.
Mm.
And there is no way that I would have done a graduation in that manner.
It's so different. I know, Miss Ruth, I know.
They were one of the guys rapped something that I couldn't hear what it was. The loud music was just going on, the bump, 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 the entire time of the graduation.
I know. Yeah. It's
But
very.
that's a generation right now that's coming on. These were graduates with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees.
Yeah.
And they danced in and they danced out.
Yeah. I went to a wedding recently. I had never seen anything like that. They danced in the room and then they had this money thing where they were shooting out money. I'm like, what in the world? It is very different, but this is their generation that they grew up watching all these videos and it's like and it's social media too. I mean, Instagram, Facebook, you want to be the biggest on there. It's very different, very interesting. Well, we already did we talked about the Grand Canyon. I have this question. In what way did Will honor his authentic self? And in what ways did he not? We already kind of talked about it. Is he authentic? How's he honoring his authentic self and how is he not honoring his authentic self?
I read and saw in his words a sense of sadness.
Mm,
He became his father. As much as he wrote about him, talked about him, forgave him,
yeah.
as much as he was so sad because he couldn't help his mother, as he abused her, as he beat her, that was the biggest weight on him for a long time. I don't even know if he ever got over that, but
Mm,
he wrote so much about his abusive father, and yet he didn't want to be like that,
uh-huh.
but yet he was like that. He became that at the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
He became that abusive father image or persona.
Yeah.
I think what you saw at the Academy Awards, he wrote about it personified by the character, his father. But at the Academy Awards, it was him being just like his father.
Mm,
Lost his temper, struck out, struck a man, embarrassed everyone,
mhm.
never regretted it until later, if he
Right.
did, if he
Right.
did. So I was thinking his authentic self, this question, his authentic self was his father.
Mm,
He, Will Smith, like I said, became just like his dad. Whether he realized it or not at the very end, did he fool us? Did he fool everybody? I think, yes, he did.
yeah.
I thought he fooled everybody. In his biography, it comes out as not Mr. Perfect. Everybody forgives him. He's always going to be forgiven. Nothing bad's going to happen to him. He can keep doing what he wants, make money, be famous, be the pride and joy of the family, or do whatever. But at the very end, in the very end, when he looks at himself in the mirror just by himself, he sees his father, reflection of his father, by that one act that he did at the Academy Awards.
That's deep.
That's what I saw in the
Thank
very beginning of his biography, throughout the biography, and the very act at the Academy Awards had nothing to do with what he wrote. I mean, it had everything to do with what he wrote in his biography. He became his father. That's the
became.
way I saw it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Can someone piggyback on that? Because she said a lot. I think she
Yeah.
summed it all up. Go ahead, Amanda.
I really enjoy listening in and hearing everyone's discussion. I grew up with the era of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Will Smith in his, music days, and it has been kind of sad and interesting to see, like Chris said, the facade kind of crumble. And I just think it's very ironic that in the Oprah interview, he said that his elixir was comedy, and that is kind of what actually has become his downfall, or the strike against him this year. It's he wasn't able to kind of mitigate that within himself.
Oh, good point.
Oh, and added to that, Chris Rock, the famous comedian, probably more popular than Will Smith in some ways, being a comedian, expressing comedy his way, Chris Rock way, not by ridiculing Will Smith or his wife Jada, but just making a comment that he thought would elicit a laugh, which made people laugh, which made Will Smith laugh, which made Jada laugh. And then all of a sudden, Will Smith lost his temper and wasn't laughing anymore. So I wrote this down because I wanted to ask, this comedian Chris Rock and this comedian Will Smith, the laughter that Chris Rock elicited by not ridiculing Jada, but by talking just in general terms, what is the difference between Chris Rock being the comedian and Will Smith being the comedian? Why couldn't Will Smith just let go of his anger and just laugh, continue to laugh like he was laughing at this joke that Chris Rock made?
I thought it was funny at first.
Yeah.
I think the look his wife gave, there's so many layers to it. I mean,
Well, but then I'm saying that if Will Smith with Oprah talks about comedy oversees everything and overcomes everything, no matter how bad it is, comedy is it. And yet at the same time, he couldn't laugh
no,
at himself.
his true demeanor was shown.
Yeah.
Was shown. And Amanda made a great point. Good. Oh, you guys, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I don't know.
No, this is good discussion. It's just so deep. Tara, anything to add? Because she and I had actually talked about exactly this a few weeks ago.
No.
How did his personal relationships play into his
Hmm.
professional success? I always liked Jazzy Jeff. And I always felt that Will could have brought him up a little bit more.
Of who?
Jazzy Jeff. That's who he's
yeah.
that song Summertime. I did like that one. That was his one rap album.
Yeah.
It's almost like the people that he could get something from. I don't understand in a negative way, but who could help him. Those relationships helped him. But did he talk much about helping others or lifting others up? His family, maybe his wife and kids, but I kind of see him as a little selfish.
Well, he doesn't talk too much about his siblings.
I've never heard anything about him. I wouldn't have read the book. I began to know
Nothing.
that he even had twin
Yeah.
siblings.
He didn't say much about his sister, Pamela. He didn't talk about it. He talked about his mother being abused, yes, and how helpless he felt, but how ashamed he was, and he couldn't do this. How he feared his father most of his life. And I know did you see the photographs in the book of him with his
Yes.
family and his
Uh-huh.
parents? I know you can't judge photographs and assume
Hard to see on the
behavior. I mean, if he disliked and dishonored and disrespected his father most of his life, look at the life that he gave to his family because of his money and his wealth and his fame and his fortune and his music. They're all led a very happy life if you want to live lavishly like they did. Trips abroad.
Oh
That's fine. I mean, that's great. Good for him that he was able to make money, be funny, get rich, be famous, know all these wealthy people, all of these movie stars. The one person that I read who came to his aid right away after the Oscars was Denzel Washington.
Denzel Washington, yeah.
He never talked about him in his book. He talked a lot about him later, how he came to help him, and how he consoled him, and how they prayed together, and how they talked about God together, and what he learned from Denzel throughout his life. But he never wrote about Denzel. I thought that was curious.
Yeah, I agree. Tara, what do you think? I saw you shaking your head when I was saying how he just didn't seem, what is he doing to uplift people, or did you see?
It seemed a little self-centered. It's all about him. You don't hear about relationships with people like contemporaries of his. I don't know, maybe that is the point. He's really isolated himself to get to success. I'm really struck by the drive he had to control everything in his life, the narrative around who he was, how people perceived his relationships. Remember the story of how he was getting a haircut from someone and he had dragged them away from their family to give him a haircut to make him look nice. But then he asked his ex-wife to pay and she didn't do what he needed her to do. Not yet, babe. And she wasn't able to, no, meltdown. She wasn't able to do what he needed her to do, and she ruined his reputation with that person, so he just lambasted her for interfering with his image, and causing someone to think that he wasn't perfect. And I think about the success and the failures of some of his movies. He was in a movie with his youngest son,
Right.
and the movie tanked. I liked it, actually. I forget what it was called, but he was with his youngest son. They went to space.
Oh,
And,
yeah. What was that?
It tanked. And he said that's the one movie
After Earth.
After Earth. He's the one movie where he said he did not bring his full will self to it and control everything, because he wanted to give his son freedom to not be controlled under his thumb. And that movie was horribly destroyed at the box office, which he's lending, this, he's basically telling the story. They like, see what happens when I don't control everything that's happening around me, and the reputation that I have and the narrative that I have, things fall apart. And that's exactly, I think, why he acted the way he did at the Academy Awards. He still lives his life that way, out of terror of if I lose my grip, I don't want to be viewed as soft or out of control, or taking jabs from people about my family. So I got to go out and control everything. And it's just a mess.
Very, very good. Very good. Excellent, you guys.
Well, he's been banned from attending the Academy Awards for 10 years.
That's a long time. How must he be feeling now when you guys know how he wants to be in control? This must be just, he can't go to the awards for 10 years.
That doesn't mean he can't be nominated for an award or send somebody to pick up an award on his behalf if he wins. But it's just that he can't attend.
But his image is tainted, and he's no longer, get this book with his beautiful face on the cover. And I mean, this must be so rough. I haven't heard anything in the media.
I don't know, Professor. To write this biography that is so self-revealing, when this man throws everything out negatively about himself as well, I don't think he is bringing himself any harm by being on Oprah's show. I think when Oprah, as you probably know, when she agrees that this book is something to read, or this novel, every novel that she recommends goes to the top of the list of the bestsellers.
Oh, yes.
So this book probably went to the very top of the best-selling list. It may not have been there, but it was there after Oprah recommended it.
Yeah,
because it was Oprah.
Yeah,
and for him to be with Oprah, I have to tell you this little clip that you showed with him and Oprah talking.
Yeah.
I was maybe just assuming that she knew what he was talking about, but she kind of had a little question mark on her face a couple of times when he said something. Maybe she didn't understand what he meant. I don't know, but it just didn't make sense.
It didn't seem to be like they were in sync.
Yeah.
Good.
But that's what's going to happen to him. He can still make movies. He can still make himself the star of a film. He can still do all of that. Hollywood will probably, thank him, or maybe they'll accept him. They'll bring him back. Nothing will happen. Nothing's going to change, really.
I think in himself, though, inside, he knows that we see who he really is.
Yes.
I think the mask is off.
Yeah, really.
You guys, what was your overall takeaway from this book? What do you take away from it?
Well, I like to read biographies. I'm a biography reader. I read Will Smith, someone I did not know. I knew Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I knew that. I did watch that program at one point. But what I took away from this book was reading about Will Smith, the rapper, Will Smith, the actor, Will Smith, the father, Will Smith, the abused child, Will Smith, the kid who loved his mother, hated his father, Will Smith, who never said he wanted to be like his father. You know how some children are, they want to be like mom or dad.
Yeah.
He didn't say that so much, that he didn't want to be like his dad, and yet he became like his dad. So for me, I think the takeaway was he became like his father.
Yeah. He became what he didn't want to become.
Yeah, that was my overall takeaway from the
takeaway.
book.
That's perfect. Thank you. Tara, what's your takeaway?
It's a little noisy here. Let me come back to me in a few.
Oh, no problem. Lonnie. Miss Ruth, from what you've heard, what would be your takeaway possibly from this book?
I want to say that Will was up above all other areas of his life and the people and the young people around his life. But it seems to me, from what I'd heard, he really wanted to be better than any of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to make the money that he was looking for.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
That was that was what I took.
That sums him up. Mm-hmm. Amanda, how about you?
Just from, conversations, I was able to read the first 35 pages of the book online, actually. But my perception is that he felt that he was, had reached a certain point in his life, I think, with the self-awareness and enlightenment. And what seems to have come to pass is that he still has a long way to go. And I think that's something that the public has seen, and maybe something he didn't know was within himself that just came out in that spur of the moment. I know I've done things that, are kind of a visceral reaction. And I look at it afterwards and be like, man, I didn't realize I'd, react so quickly to something. So I think it's really interesting, and just to realize that I think he needs to, maybe kind of look and realize that it's okay to be human. It's okay to not, be in control. And I think that's a point. Maybe this is that rock bottom for him to be able to start on a journey that he's really wanted to go on in his life, or that he thought he was on a path that he was on. And maybe this is the start to really, finding that enlightenment for him.
That catalyst. Excellent.
Mhm.
Okay. Thanks, Amanda.
I really appreciate these comments. Another thing that I noticed is that I appreciate is that we can as a public stop putting people on pedestals. We see this person who's just probably darn near a billionaire and has what we think we want ultimately, but money can't buy the peace that you can feel when someone says a joke that you don't like, and you can still live. You can still not punch them. You can still not destroy an event, or the peace of not feeling like you need to save and rescue people in your family or control them so that, everything goes perfectly in your life. Just like I appreciate the book because it's a reminder. He's not perfect, even though he tried. We're not perfect, and we shouldn't try. And he's got to forgive himself, just like we have to forgive ourselves. And we need to stop putting people on pedestals. Because I read another biography, Valerie Bertinelli's, just a couple weeks ago, and she's doing the same thing, just so raw and honest about not liking her body. And I remember having posters, vision boards of her when she lost all that weight. And I thought, I've got to get it together, be like Valerie Bertinelli.
Who are you talking about, Tara?
Valerie Bertinelli.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I remember putting pictures of her body saying, I want to be like that. How many times have we looked at Will Smith and said, we want a life like his? I have pictures of Architecture Digest of his house, a picture, the inside. I'm like, please, I want to be like that. Can we stop that? Can we stop that?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't bring him peace. Those pillows in that house are not bringing him peace. And millions of people saw what he did, or millions of people that Valerie Bertinelli think are judging her because she's gained weight back. They have trouble too.
They are the same things that we are. And who is he trying to be? What is he? He's so trying to run away from being his father that he ran into a circle and ran back into it. I think that's my biggest takeaway, is that childhood trauma is real. I'm in education, and I was a school principal for 6 years. And I always took the time to get to know the kids in their home life so that we could provide them with counseling. We had counseling sessions on our campus because I've lived long enough. I've reached 50 at this point, a little over it, that those things come up. They rise up in life. something could trigger something. And something triggered Will, where he went up and behaved and lashed out the way that he did. And so what we hear, you hear these stories and all these autobiographies. This happened when I was a little child. This influenced me. That it's just so important that we understand trauma and childhood trauma and do something as a nation to address it. And, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't think to say anything about Texas and what happened to those poor children. That was just tragic. And my heart goes out to the tragedy and how this is going to affect those who survived. And look at Will. He's on top of the world. Yet the stuff that he saw when he was a kid is still plaguing him. So that was my biggest takeaway, is that we really need to figure out a way to help with childhood trauma.
I'd just like to add to that.
Yeah.
And it's been my experience when I've heard you say that he took on his father's way of life. Most of the young men that I've known don't even live with their father, and they still have his ways.
The sins of the fathers. Yep. It's in
And
that
they
DNA.
don't even have to live around them.
No, they don't. They don't. And sometimes that's part of the trauma.
Yeah.
Is abandonment. And I think those things we need to talk about. And Will, you guys have brought it up, you know, he hasn't acknowledged this. He's gone through a self-help journey, but maybe at a surface level. And he needs to go deeper now to see what's really still down in there that he needs to work on. Excellent, excellent. Well, Miss Joanne couldn't make it tonight because her family was in town. There's my bird clock to remind us it's time to go. But our next book, we're going to take June off for the holidays. So we're going to take a June summer vacation. But on July 28th, we're going to come back with a book that she recommended called Isn't Her Grace Amazing? She texted me one night, kind of late, and told me about this, Women Who Changed Gospel Music. So I look forward to this one. I think it's going to be a great, great book. I hope that date's going to work, Amanda. That was the one that I had picked. But
It
that
looks clear. I think we'll be good.
Oh, excellent. That's going to be our next book. So thank you all for being here for our session. I think it was a good one. That was awesome.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
That was
Thank you.
fun. I like this one. We gotta get some more contemporary ones, but the next one will be good too. And Amanda, thanks for participating. Awesome. Yay.
Thank you.
That was awesome. You guys, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Have
thank you.
have a great June, everybody. See you in
Yes,
July.
enjoy your vacation.
Bye.
See you in July.
Okay.
Love
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Love you all.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.